Do it for the culture, pull out with a cartel. I'ma do it for the culture, pull out.
Who are you? My name is Errolson Hugh. I am the co-founder and principal designer of Acronym. Acronym is a brand founded on the idea of combining technology and personal identity together. And we see the design of apparel probably more like an industrial designer or an interface designer than apparel. We approach it as an environmental interface between the wearer and the external surrounding and their external surroundings. So we look at things in a different way from functional point of view, obviously, but also from a gestural point of view, in terms of the dynamics of the human body, how it operates, how it moves. And the idea is that we're trying to give each person that wears it sort of a sense of agency so that they feel like they are capable of doing more with the apparel than they could without it. Working during the pandemic this year was actually very fruitful for us. Luckily, we had a project that we were able to do remotely. We did a collaboration laptop together with ASUS Republic of Gamers. And one of our close collaborators on that project, David Rudnick, he said to me in March probably, he's like, dude, the whole world's gonna lock down. We gotta go to LA right now and kick this project off, and then we can all like hibernate and do this while nothing else is happening. So we all jumped into planes and went to LA, and literally like I caught the very last flight out of LA back to Germany before the airports closed. And David was totally right. Everything locked down, and we spent the entire pandemic basically on Zoom calls, putting together the project, which launched just in, when did it come out actually? End of September. Yeah, so that was great. But staying sane, not that easy. Ate a lot of takeout food, watched a lot of Netflix, the usual stuff. But yeah, thank God for, telecommunications and being able to keep in touch with your friends, even though everybody's stuck in their living rooms. Yeah, Acronym is definitely known, I think, as an outdoor brand. I think that's because we're known for our jackets, but we spend just as much time doing all the other gear as well. But obviously during lockdown, things changed. I think there was a good maybe 4 weeks where I didn't put socks on. That was pretty funny. And having to go out the first time then, I was like, God damn, how do these work? Yeah, I think a large part of the population probably spent much of the pandemic without pants, I'm guessing. I'm guessing it's not just us. Yeah. Well, one of the great things about Acronym pants is that they're super comfortable. So P30A is the one that I tend to rock when I'm looking for maximum laziness. And but it's funny because that's also the same pant I look for when I'm going outside and looking for maximum utility. So proof of concept. Started in apparel. We started in apparel by going to school, actually. But growing up, I always knew I wanted to do something in design. And I've told this story before, but it was between graphics, architecture, and apparel, fashion. And I figured there'd be more girls in fashion. That was that was my 15-year-old brain. Turned out I was right as well. But yeah, really, obviously it's back then even more so a hard industry to get into. But we just did whatever we could. We started as an agency, and we'd take contract design jobs for any brand that would hire us to do anything. So I've done, club wear, inline skate collections, bathing suit collections, really nasty techno stuff in Germany that no one's ever heard of. Also some really good stuff, like we worked with a brand called Sabotage, which has influenced our approach to communications super heavily. They were they're right in the internet hole just before things became fully digital, but too late to be like archived. Yeah, and really we came in it kind of the hard way. We didn't know anyone in the industry. We didn't have any contacts. So we were doing freelance gigs for, in the end, it turned out to be a lot of snowboard brands. And then when we decided we had to do our own thing, we just started to sell it to our friends, really. There was a good period of, probably 4 or 5 years where if you saw somebody wearing Acronym, you could walk up to them and be like, hey, do you know Errolson? And they would have been like, yeah, I hung with him 2 weeks ago in Japan or whatever. And so there's some good, funny friendships actually that came together that way. And really we just spent most of our time focusing on the craft and just learning how to make stuff. And it took Acronym, I'd say, quite a while to gain traction as a brand that it has now, mainly because we just did everything by word of mouth. So we made stuff, people wore it, they liked it, they talked about it to each other and to their friends, and that was it. It's just very incremental, actually. Yeah, working at Burton Snowboards was super pivotal for Acronym, for myself as a designer in general. It's really interesting because Burton Snowboards at the time, they were, I think, if you trace back a lot of the people who are known in the industry now, so many of them got their start there. We met Stash through Burton. Jeff Stable was doing stuff for them. Hiroki from Visvim, he got his start there. We did, so many people. And Greg Dakishin was the sort of creative director of Burton Snowboards back then. And he was the guy who, connected everyone together and introduced people to the brand and to each other and made all that stuff happen. Particularly at the beginning of Acronym, we met all of the key people that we sort of needed to introduce the brand. In retrospect, we didn't know it at the time. Through those connections, we went on trips. Burton would take parts of the crew and go to Japan and hang out, and we were lucky enough to attend a couple of those trips, and that's where I met Yopi from Real Mad Hectic, who became our first distributor in Japan. We also met Fraser through. Did I meet Fraser through Burton? I can't remember now. It's a long time ago. But yeah, Fraser was another key person that we met. He used to be the manager of the Hideout store, which was the first shop outside of Japan that sold Bathing Ape and Neighborhood and all that stuff. Used to be called Hit and Run, changed its name to Hideout. And then at some point, Fraser was approached by Nike, and he became sort of the de facto head of collaboration. So his job was to interface with the what became the culture at large, and bring interesting people to Nike and show them. That's actually how we ended up with Nike, and so many other people. The reason that they're collaborating with Nike is because of Fraser. Fraser also introduced us to like Sarah at Colette or Luca at Slam Jam. And yeah, and that was the beginning of the brand, is selling to those people who, we just knew personally. This is still, before social media and even e-commerce. So there was no way you couldn't just go online and Google streetwear shops or whatever. Streetwear wasn't even a thing. So yeah. And then one of the other people that we worked with at Burton was obviously Hiroshi Fujiwara. And through the Burton Snowboards analog collection, we were lucky enough to collaborate with him and did one jacket in particular that's pretty amazing still to this day, I think, which is called the Q jacket, which had these sort of concealed zip panels that you could, it could go from a super clean fronted jacket to one that had like all these cargo pockets visible. And Hiroshi had the idea because one of his favorite anime detectives apparently had a trench coat that he could pull everything out of, and he's like, this is what I want to do. Like, okay. Went back to the lab and figured it out, and yeah, it was a good one. It's really hard for me to pick a favorite collaboration because, every collaboration you do is special. That's why you do it. You're trying to do something that you can't do on your own, and you're ideally, or at least we're always working with people that we respect or that we've always wanted to work with. So every single one is like a thrill. I don't think I can single out any above the others. Obviously the Nike shoes were great because they allowed us to reach a wider audience. Acronym tends to be very expensive, so that was nice to do something that was more, democratic and accessible. Obviously the RMT01, the new laptop we just did with Asus Republic of Gamers, is super exciting because it's the first thing in the technology sector that we've done, and we're hoping to do more of that type of thing in the future. We have a really, really good one coming up that I can't tell you about, but that's probably my favorite right now, the secret one. Especially today and with social media, it's really easy to look at anybody's Instagram feed and be like, wow, their whole thing is so smooth and their life is so amazing, and look at this brand and whatever. But the reality of it is that all of that stuff, it's just the highlight reel, right? So yeah, obviously there have been extremely trying circumstances with the brand, and even right at the beginning, I think. In 2002, we launched the first Acronym product ever, which was called ACR Kit 1. It was a box set that came with a jacket and a bag, some software and some music, and put everything together. We didn't have enough money to do a whole collection, so we decided to put all the ideas of a collection into one product. And it was the first thing we did, so we just went all out, tried to do as much as possible, and that almost killed us. Like, we spent all the money we had earned over the previous, 5 years, and just went for broke. And really, it almost ended before it started. But the good thing about that was that we learned some very valuable lessons in terms of scope and planning and return on investment. But Acronym being what it is, where we're always trying to push the maximum. We're always trying to push the limits of the technically possible with the limits of the aesthetically possible. So that makes every single season, every product we do, that makes it very difficult to make, actually. So in that respect, our goal is always just to be able to do it the next season again. And that's usually hard enough. So yeah, there's been many, many times when we've almost closed up shop. Yeah, I think copying is obviously an inherent part of any creative endeavor. And there's a line, I think, that it's, between copying to learn something, or just outright copying to make money. And depending on who does it, it can be really painful, or it can just be LOL, right? But I think earlier in our careers, when we were, struggling just to make the business make some kind of sense, then the copying was a lot more worrisome. But these days, because we found sort of our methodology and our customer, who are educated enough to know, okay, this is the original thing and this is the fake thing, and these are the differences. Now it's more I just see it more as a symptom of sort of a broken system that I don't think we'll ever get totally away from it. I also think it's different than, when people copy something. Are you copying a design that was for example, from the US military that had a giant budget and was paid by someone's taxes, all the research that went into it, and part of this big machine? Or are you copying some, small company somewhere that's just got this one idea and they've put their whole life into it and are trying to make ends meet? Those are different, ethical questions. And so I think there's no universal answer to is this okay or not? Yeah. We get a lot of questions from younger designers about copying, and I always try to tell them try not to copy the result, copy the process. Like, so if you see something you admire and you really like, ask the questions like, how did they get there? Why did they do that? What decisions informed and created this end product that you admire? And if you copy the process but have your own inputs in it, you should get something that's original, but that also still has, hopefully, the feeling that was the thing that inspired you in the first place. And then the other acid test is always like, would you be cool showing it to the person who made the original one? Because if you have a bad feeling about it, you probably need to do some more work on it. But if you could show it to them and you have the feeling like that they would be like, oh wow, amazing, I never thought of that, or what a cool flip on this idea that I originally had, you've probably done enough. Yeah, research and innovation. Research is probably more of the applicable word, at least from our point of view. Because Acronym was founded with the mandate of no compromise in design. That's the whole intention of the brand. So the entire model, so the entire model of the company is based on having a framework that allows us as designers to do the most extreme things we can think of and get them onto the market. So in a sense, everything Acronym does is a form of research. Innovation, I think, at least for us internally, like we're not trying to think about how can we be innovative, because that in our experience tends to lead to things that are just like new for new's sake. We'd rather try and solve something or use our tools to achieve something that hasn't been done before or hasn't been done in that way, or use existing materials or processes in a way that is unconventional or unorthodox. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think when it does work, then people call it innovation. But yeah, so Acronym is a constant. We're just constantly testing and constantly trying things, constantly experimenting. And twice a year, because it's still fashion, seasonal collection, we collect all those things together that we think are ready to be shown and put them out. But it's not a collection in that sense where it has like a common theme or a common color palette or anything like that. It's more of like, these are the things that we've been working on that are ready now. So. That's actually a really interesting question. We do get approached a lot by film people, video games, our work. If you look at any concept art website, you'll see our work used as the basis for countless science fiction character designs and video game designs. I think that probably comes from the fact that growing up in Canada, I didn't have actually much access to fashion as we know it today. Again, pre-internet, pre-social media, all of that. But I had lots of access to film. So that's probably the thing that influenced the way I perceive dress, other than the actual clothes that were around me. More than anything else is the language of cinema. So that's just probably just inherently woven into the way we approach design. Another person I know, Tyler Jordan, who used to be the president of Arc'teryx, he now runs a brand called 7 Mesh. He once said, your brand isn't what you tell people it is, it's what other people tell you it is. So if John Mayer says that's what it is, I tend to believe him. Yeah, the fashion industry is extremely fast-paced. It's a high level of, it's just rampant consumerism most of the times. There's extremely high level of turnover in terms of, styles or trends or even brands. And we walk the line between that and our vision by just completely ignoring all of that, actually. So we're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what we have as design goals. We're always trying to make something that's what we call atemporal or outside of time. So, a lot of the times you'll see that in our collections as well. We'll bring something back that, we actually designed, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, just because we think it's still valid. When we design something, we're trying to solve a problem or trying to solve for a specific type of apparel that performs a specific function. And usually when we've done our homework and we've achieved something that we're happy with, even if we were to look at that same problem again, we'd probably end up with the same result. So in that respect, Acronym just goes completely against the grain and probably always will. Yeah, the Lunar Force one that we did with Nike was our first collaborative shoe. That was really funny because that was the first shoe that I think broke sort of the mold of collaborative shoes at the time, at least, where it was the first shoe that I know of where you had the traditional, the iconic Nike silhouette, and then additional external elements were added onto it, almost like an intervention. We had the zip, slammed into the side of it. The swoosh actually stuck off the shoe. All of that stuff, it was the first time that had been done. And I think people, especially because the original photos, the first place anyone could see it were these really terrible leaked pictures from some showroom. I don't even know where it was. And the photos were terrible. And then people, obviously, they just freaked out. They were just like, what the hell is this supposed to be? And, I joked that it was the most hated Nike of all time. And I think for that period, when it was introduced and first leaked, it really was. But it's funny to see over the years, even within that year after it came out, how it became almost like a classic, right? We even re-released it with Nike already once. And it's been copied by, everyone from, COS to Dolce & Gabbana to Tommy Hilfiger. And I don't know how many versions of it there are. Yeah, it's interesting to see that I guess it's not that surprising. You do something new, people are always going to react against it. And I think if the design is valid, though, it will prevail over time, hopefully. Yeah, I think it's been really interesting for us, for everybody who's been part of the industry for since it started, really, to see streetwear go from literally people making stuff for themselves and their friends to what are arguably the biggest brands in the world. And I think it's good. It's a natural, organic development. People can obviously hate and be like, that they're selling out or people aren't doing what they originally set out to do, but in the context of where the world is, it's still the most relevant stuff. And that's why it is, at the scale it is today. And it's a more vigorous and more relevant form of brand than the traditional, luxury brands that it's replacing or cannibalizing even. So yeah, it's fun to watch, actually. Yeah, we're excited to finally be available in Singapore at Chamber, and we will actually very soon, next season, be delivering some more hot weather compatible products. So look out for that. I've actually never been to Singapore. I'd love to go. Hopefully one day when COVID is over and everybody's things are back to normal, I will be able to make a trip out there and ideally hit Cartel as well.
Oh.